people still coming in. I think I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Like I said, we got a decent amount that we want to get to. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over and we're going to get started here. All right, guys. Well, again, thank you and welcome to our part 3, incorporating Survey 123 into Collector with related records, part 3 of 3. Like I mentioned before, I know a lot of you have attended the first 2 parts. Very well received. Mike has built a very good little series here. So this will kind of wrap it up. And speaking of wrapping up for the rest of the year, we just have one more webinar scheduled. It's going to be regarding ArcGIS Indoors. We've done a couple of those as well with Jonathan, our CEO here. We are currently working on a plan for 2021. So again, for all of you that have attended our webinars this year, again, we thank you for that. And we'll be hopefully distributing that information shortly within the next month or so. But of course, anything or this last webinar that's of the year, if you guys want to sign up for that, I'm going to start dropping some links in the chat box here. So cloudpointgeo.com/webinars, sign up for that. That will also continue to be the webpage for 2021. So again, keep that bookmarked. We use Zoom for all our webinars, of course, and we do take questions and answers towards the end. So feel free to drop a question in the chat room or the Q&A box at any time, and we'll try to get to those at the end. And of course, we cover a lot of topics. Whether it's public works, local government, AGO, kickstarts, mapping cemeteries, our sign inventory management, sign ops. You know, we have our specialty release ready and ArcGIS Indoor specialty, which we recently got. But today we're going to go through the last part, like I've mentioned, the last part of Survey 123 Connect and how that works with Collector and really get you guys wrapped up here. And with that, as I transition over to Mike, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to, Mike, if you want to go ahead and start pulling your stuff up, I'm going to start. Got a couple poll questions for you guys and launch that. So if you guys wouldn't mind chiming in there, 3 little questions for you.
And Bill, I'm ready to go. I just need to be able to share my screen here.
Oh, my mistake. I thought I had done that. There we go.
All right.
Take it away. I'll give
Thank
you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yep. Give you guys a few more seconds here to chime in on that poll question. Looks like we're wrapping up. You'll have to switch your display there, Mike. We're looking at your.
Oh, okay. The presenter here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just hit display settings and you can switch view.
There we go.
And poll is finalized here, so I'm going to share those results. Have you designed a survey? Most people said yes. That's good.
Yeah, fantastic.
Configured a web map for use in Collector? Yes, again. And do you have experience working with related records? So yeah, so a lot of good experience here, a lot of good knowledge. But again, we thank you for attending as a little brush up and hopefully some extra little tips and tricks. So I'm going to move the pictures out of the way. There we go. Go ahead. Take it away, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill. And as Bill mentioned, this is going to be part 3 of incorporating Survey 123 into Collector with related records. So we'll go ahead and show the first slide here. So what I want to do really quickly is just revisit what we've done in the first and second webinars, and then talk a little bit here about what we're going to cover today. So in the first webinar, what we did was we learned the basics of navigating and how to use Survey 123 Connect, which is a little different than Survey 123 Web Designer. Survey 123 Connect is a much more robust form creator that we can utilize to build more advanced survey forms than what we can do in Web Designer. So again, in the first webinar, we just kind of learned the basics of navigating it, how we can start a survey, and some basic fields and functions that we can use in Survey 123 Connect. In the second webinar, we built on that and we learned some more advanced concepts and what we can do in Survey 123 Connect. So in the second webinar, we utilized some different things with our survey here, some advanced techniques. We built in some relevancies, we added in some calculations, and all of those kind of build on each other to kind of create a more advanced and user-friendly survey form that ultimately the end users will be able to take better advantage of. And today what we're going to do is we're going to take that survey that we built in our first and second webinars, we're going to take that survey form, and we're going to see how we can utilize that form in a real world example workflow of culvert inspections. So what we're going to do is we're going to tie that survey form that we've created into ArcGIS Collector, which is another, probably between Collector and Survey123, are the most commonly used and deployed Esri solutions for data collection, and specifically mobile out in the field data collection applications. So we're going to put a bow on that today. We're going to see how we can utilize our form in Collector. Before we get going here first, I do want to kind of touch on the differences between Survey123 and Collector. I found this table, and this table I think does a good job of kind of explaining those differences for us. We can see on the left-hand side the different functionalities that exist in Survey123 and Collector, and we can see in Survey123 and Collector where those functionalities exist. The biggest difference between Survey123 and Collector is how data is collected. In Survey123, data is collected through a form, and that's exactly what we built in our first two webinars. We built that form in order for our end users to be able to collect data through. So Survey123 is form-centric, and we can see Collector is map-centric. So the biggest difference there between those two is simply the user interface that the end users collect their data through. They both support capture of new data, so Survey123 can submit forms that represent new features, and Collector, obviously, users can add features in there. They both allow editing of existing data. Smart forms, this is another big difference. Survey123, yes, allows smart forms, and that's exactly what we built using our XLS forms in Survey123 Connect, and Collector does not support the use of smart forms. However, they both work offline. Survey123 does support anonymous access. So for instance, we could create a survey form for the general public to use and submit data to us, whereas ArcGIS Collector requires an ArcGIS Online sign-in to be able to use and collect and edit data. They're both available on multiple different platforms, and technical support to varying degrees is available for both. So to begin today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the workflow overview of kind of taking our survey form that we've built again in Survey123 Connect, and taking that form and putting it into ArcGIS Collector in order for our end users to be able to leverage both Esri solutions. So to begin, one of the first things we're going to want to do here in ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap, so on the desktop softwares, we're going to want to run the create relationship class geoprocessing tool, and we're going to use this to relate our feature layer. In this case, what we're going to be using is our culverts example. So we're going to take our culverts feature layer, and we're going to create a relationship class between that feature layer and a related table. Now that related table for us in our example is going to be for submitted inspections. Now you can of course have different scenarios of this, but in our case, our feature layer is going to be culverts, and the related table is going to house all those inspection records submitted through Survey123 on our culverts. Now this is very key in this workflow process. And to get this to work properly, Esri requires multiple different steps, multiple different checks in order for this workflow to function properly. One of the biggest things to remember, and is very important throughout this workflow process, is that this relationship class must be built using global IDs. So what that means is our culverts feature layer must have global IDs for all of the features within that feature layer, and our related table must have a global ID field in order to house those global IDs on the feature layer. So now what this kind of means is I've included a screenshot here that we can kind of look this through. So we've seen this relationship class here as a one-to-many. So that means we can stack multiple different inspections onto one culvert feature. So if it was a one-to-one relationship class, what we'd be looking at is you'd only be able to submit one inspection record per survey or per culvert. in this case, since it's one-to-many, we can have multiple inspection records on each culvert. We can see that here, a couple fields we're looking at, right underneath that cardinality is the primary key and the foreign key. The primary key is the key in our feature layer that we're going to be used to relate to the foreign key in the related table. So here I've used the global ID field that exists in my culverts feature layer. And what I've done here is I've created an empty global ID field in the related table. And what I've done here is I've called that the asset GUID. And so essentially, every time we're going to submit an inspection, what's going to happen here, since that inspection record is going to be taken from the culverts feature, it's going to take the culvert's global ID and populate it automatically into that asset GUID field. And that's going to be how they're connected. So a global ID obviously is kind of a unique identifier field for a feature. So no two features can have the same global ID value as another. So essentially, when we're relating or creating this relationship class, that's going to be how all of these related records are related specifically to just one individual culvert at a time. And then we can kind of see here on our relationship class, we can see the source URL. We can see it's a feature table. There's this one table and its name and has an object ID field here too. So once we've created that relationship class, and again, we're creating the relationship class on global IDs. We're taking the global ID of the culverts feature layer and relating it to the empty asset GUID ID field in the related table. So once that relationship class is built and we've got all the fields necessary, required, and desired in both the culverts feature layer and in the related table, we're going to go ahead and we're going to publish that feature class to ArcGIS Online, where it will live as a hosted feature layer. Next, we're going to take our survey form that we've built in Survey123 Connect, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to publish that survey form up also to ArcGIS Online. So now we've got our feature layer along with the related table and the survey form both on ArcGIS Online. And that's going to be how we're going to get it into a web map for Collector. But for here, I'd also like to point out, once we published our survey, we're going to have to go into the survey settings within the Survey123 web designer here. We're going to go into the survey settings and we're going to change how the survey is opened. You can see here from the screenshot, what we're going to do is we're going to open the survey in the Survey123 field app directly. So why this option is chosen is because when we open it in the field app directly, imagine the end user, he's got an iPad or some other mobile device that the end user is collecting data on. They're going to be out in the field and they're going to have some sort of mobility. So this kind of saves the user from, opening the survey in a browser, or, whether it's going to ask them to open it in the field app or in a browser. It'll just open directly in the Survey123 field app very seamlessly. It'll save time and it'll save effort as the end users are collecting their data. One important thing to remember here is that we're going to have to save our survey settings. So every time we make a change, always good to remember to save those settings. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and copy that link as shown above here. So, and this will be one thing I'll kind of point out later, but our link, this link here is a URL specifically to our Survey123 form. And this link, this URL structure changes depending on the options that we chose above. So if it opens in the survey browser directly, that link is going to look a little bit different than how it looks now that we've selected open the survey in the field app directly. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and grab that link. We're going to go ahead and make sure we've got that handy. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a web map on ArcGIS Online that will eventually be used in ArcGIS Collector. So essentially what that means is to enable a web map for Collector, at least at a minimum, one layer must be editable and have pop-ups enabled. So essentially that's kind of how Collector will be able to interact with the feature layers. It's going to look for what layers that you select are editable and have pop-ups enabled. And the pop-ups are what ArcGIS Collector reads when it's looking at the data of a feature. From here, we're going to be able to configure our web map to kind of our organizational needs and desires. We're going to be able to put our culverts feature layer within our web map. And when we do that, it's going to bring in, since it's related to our inspections table, it's going to bring in that table automatically with it as well. So here, I've just taken a screenshot of our web map. We'll take a look at this later, but I've just got my culverts feature layer in there, some good aerial imagery to assist my end users in their data collection, just to give them a little bit more context and some more helpful data as they're out in the field and inspecting the culverts. So once we've got our web map structured and built, what we're going to go ahead and do is make sure, again, our pop-up is enabled on the culverts feature layer. From here, we're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking with our pop-up to get it to work correctly, to get it to look at that Survey123 form. So the biggest thing we need to do here, instead of by default, it'll just show a list of custom attributes. From here, what we're going to want to do is show a custom attribute display. So you can see on my screenshot here on the left, the show pop-ups box is enabled. That will enable pop-ups. Our pop-ups will have a title. Here I've just gone and I said, hey, show the ID number of the specific culverts, and display the pop-up contents. That's where we're going to say select a custom attribute display. Once we've done that, we're going to want to click on configure. So right underneath that display option, here is where it's going to show us, hey, here's where you can customize or configure your attribute display. So from here, our second screenshot here on the right, excuse me, I've added in a few different attributes here that we can see just kind of at a glance. So when a user selects one of these culverts, they're going to be able to see the type, the material, the length in feet, and the overall condition of the culvert. But here's the most important part. Underneath that, I typed in some text. I just said, add an inspection record. And what I've done here is I've hyperlinked this text to open our Survey123 form. So how do we do that? Well, what we'll want to do is click on the hyperlink. We're going to cover our text. We're going to select that text, click on the hyperlink option. We're going to copy that Survey123 form link that we copied from the Survey123 web designer view into that hyperlink. So here what I've done on the screen is I've shown an example of our culverts. This is the culverts feature layers Survey123 form, the inspection forms URL. So we can see since we have selected open in the field app directly, this is the URL structure we get. So I've broken this up into a few different brackets here to kind of explain this URL structure and how it all works. So the first part here, the link to the Survey123 form, starting at the beginning of the URL on the left, that all the way through that last set of numbers here, this is, again, that's just the link we copied from our ArcGIS Online, that Survey123 web designer. So that in and of itself will open directly the Survey123 form in the Survey123 field app. Next, what I've done is I've taken a couple of different fields that I'm going to be able to use and tack on this URL structure. I'm going to be able to take these fields and pre-populate them in my Survey123 form from data in my culverts feature layer itself. So the next bracket that I've done here, this is going to be a pre-populated field. The way that we can do this, on the very end of our Survey123 form link, we can do the and symbol, and we're going to go and field. We're going to be able to call out the Survey123 form field, and then we're going to be able to say that field will equal the feature field in the culverts feature layer. So from here, you can see I'm pre-populating in my Survey123 form. I'm pre-populating the asset ID field with the culverts ID. And secondly, I'm also pre-populating the assets GUID field. Again, this is how the relationship class is built. I'm pre-populating that field in my Survey123 form with the culverts global ID. So that's why when I created that asset GUID field in my related table, I left it blank, because when I select a culvert from my web map and open this link and I select that text that's hyperlinked, it's going to open the Survey123 form and it's going to pre-populate that inspection record with the global ID of that specific culvert. So when I submit that inspection form, that Survey123 form, it's going to use that asset GUID pre-populated in the form to relate back to that one specific individual culvert that the inspection was performed on. So that's kind of the breakdown there of that URL. And once we've got that configured, we are good to go with collecting and submitting inspections as related records. Before we dive into our demo, there's a couple things that I just wanted to note that I've kind of come across doing this process a number of different times. So a few things to note. For this inspection workflow to work properly on mobile devices, both the collector and the Survey123 applications must be installed on the specific device. So if you're using an iPad, you can download, through the App Store, or if you're on a different device and use the Google Play Store, you can go ahead and download the collector and Survey123 mobile applications on that device. And so if you have a couple different devices in your organization, say you've got 3 iPads that you want to be able to perform this workflow on, you're going to want to make sure that the collector and Survey123 applications are installed on all 3 of those iPads in order for this workflow to work properly. Next, once you have the Survey123 application downloaded, one of the things you're going to want to make sure you do is have that specific survey form downloaded on the Survey123 application. And this is just saying in Survey123, it has to be able to pull up that survey form. So simply, we just have to download that survey form to the application on that specific device as well. An important note also here to make is that all the end users who essentially you want to be able to perform inspections on or utilize this workflow for, they have to have the correct permissions through sharing permissions to all of the required layers in the collector map and even the collector map itself, just to make sure, again, that they'll have access. Since collector needs sign in through ArcGIS Online, we're going to want to make sure that all of our end users have the correct access to that map and layers within the map. Something else to note is that all the submitted survey forms will live as related records in the features related table. And that the hosted feature layer and the related table, again, I cannot emphasize this enough, must be related based on global ID fields. And every field, again, this is kind of stuff that I've just caught throughout the process of doing this, every field in the Survey123 form must also exist in the related table. So that's just to account for, once we've got it configured to put into that related table, it just has to have a place for all of that data to live in the related table. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to dive into each one of these different aspects of this process and kind of look at them a little bit more closely. So again, I'll kind of touch on our Survey123 form here that we put together in the Survey123 Connect application. So we can see, we scroll through here at the bottom here, here's our survey, here's all the fields that we're looking at, the different field types, the names. We can also see here on the right the different hints, constraints. These are all the configurable fields that make our survey unique. So we set up all these fields and constructed this survey in the first and second webinars of the series. So I don't want to touch on that too much here, and just in the interest of time. But I do want to point out one very important thing here as well in our Survey123 Connect environment here. We need to scroll down to the bottom and select Settings. And when we select Settings, there's a couple different things here I'd like to point out. When we go into Settings, we can see a couple different options here. We can see the form title. This is going to be the culvert inspections form. And this is just, again, what appears on the Survey123 form when the end user opens it in the Survey123 app. So you can kind of see that's where that lives. The next thing I'd like to point out is the submission URL. Now the submission URL is taken from ArcGIS Online. If I go to ArcGIS Online here, I go to my content. If I select my culverts feature layer, the hosted feature layer, this is this URL right here. So when I select this URL here, I'll take it back into Survey123 Connect. I'll paste it here in the submission URL. And this submission URL is essentially just saying, when I submit data from this survey form, where is it going? That's essentially what this submission URL is saying. Next, once I've got my submission URL, again, taken from the culverts hosted feature layer on ArcGIS Online, this URL up here, once I've got that, this form ID here, this is saying, okay, you've shown me through the submission URL where I'm submitting data. Now, through the form ID, you're saying where exactly in that submission URL am I putting this data? So here we have a couple different options. We could say culverts. So if, for example, we say culverts, it's submitting the data to the culverts feature layer. But since we've got a related table that's ready to have these inspection records related to, I've said inspections here. And again, that's just the name of our related table. So you can see in our form ID that inspections, that's again kind of narrowing down where this data is going to be submitted into. So that is also very important to note here. Our submission URL, again, takes the URL of the hosted feature layer from ArcGIS Online. And the form ID says, okay, what item do you want that to be submitted to? Where do you want that data to live? All right, and now that we've got our Survey123 Connect form published and we've got all the settings set up correctly, now what we're going to go ahead and do is look at the web map. So here is the web map that I created on ArcGIS Online. Again, we're looking at our culverts feature layer here. So you can see that's what, again, our little blue squares here are just some dummy culvert data here in our town, Roanoke. So you can see I've got a number of other different fields in here. We've got culverts rating, culverts last inspected, culverts inspected, and we've also got our related inspection records table down here at the bottom. So for instance, what I'd like to do first is I'm going to talk about these different layers here up at the top. These are created and these are called join layers. So these are created within this specific web map. And essentially this join layer is utilized to show any of the data on our culverts feature layer that's within the inspection records related table. So you can kind of utilize this joins feature, the join layers, to symbolize your features, our culvert features, by data that we've got from our inspection records related table. So for instance, if I toggle on this culverts inspected join layer, essentially what I'm looking at here is culverts, again, that have an inspection record in general. So this is just symbolizing, okay, all the green culverts, they've got an inspection record present. Someone has performed an inspection on them and submitted a related Survey123 form, and that lives now as a related record with that culvert. So this blue one down here does not currently have an inspection record submitted for this culvert. Another, and I really like to show off these join layers because it's a way that you can utilize your data in multiple different ways to provide different context and different data control measures essentially for our end users. So for instance, if we're doing a culvert inspection and you've got, say, 500 or more even culverts to inspect, that can become quite a handful. So by creating a join layers to say, hey, which ones have even been inspected, that can show the end users, hey, we've still got a number of different culverts here that we still have to inspect. So that's kind of also plays into the work order management sort of a thing and helps you kind of come up with a plan to inspect the remaining culverts. So another one that I kind of like to show off is when they were last inspected. So now we're looking at culverts based on their inspection date. So I'll say their age in months from the inspection date field in the related table to today, or to essentially the end of 2020. So any culverts that were inspected or have an inspection record submitted in the last 11 months show up as green. So those culverts have been inspected in the last 11 months. If a culvert has been inspected in the last 12 months, it'll show kind of as just that middle color, say, hey, the culvert was inspected within the last year, but hey, it's kind of getting time to, submit a new inspection record on this culvert. Or if a culvert hasn't been inspected in the last 18 months or more, it'll appear as red. So these are also kind of another way that we can utilize these join features, these join layers to show, hey, our end users, we've got a handful of these culverts that haven't been inspected and don't have an inspection record submitted in the last 18 months or more, possibly. So that's just a way that we can utilize this to kind of, again, create a plan for attacking and submitting inspection records for our culverts. And I've created another one here just to show the overall ratings of our culverts. So if I go back to my legend here, we can see that the culverts that are excellent or that are in great condition are dark green. And then we can see this kind of scale goes from green to a yellow to orange to a darker red, the worst condition that these culverts are in. So these are just kind of a ways to, again, kind of manage and add additional context to your data and provide the end users with a game plan on how to submit their inspections. The way to create a join feature is going to analysis, summarizing our data, selecting join features. Here we can see the target layer we're going to want to make sure is our culverts feature layer. The layer to join to our target layer, we're going to say that's our inspection records table. Here we're going to select whether it's a spatial relationship or field to match, and since there's no spatial data associated with a table, we're going to go ahead, we're going to choose the fields to match. And within our target layer, we're going to do the exact same setup that we built our relationship class on. We're going to utilize global ID in our culverts, and we're also going to say the asset GUID in the related table. And so that's, again, just to show, hey, since this is relationship class is built on that, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing here with our join layer. Next, we're going to say what kind of join do we want. Instead of one-to-one, we're going to do one-to-many, again, because culverts can have multiple different inspection records submitted to them. What we're going to want to do here is give it a title. So I'll just say culverts join layer. I'll give it an example on the end. We're going to see where we can save the result in our content. And instead of using the current map extent, we're going to create the results as a hosted feature layer view in and of themselves. So when I run this analysis, it's going to go ahead and create another join layer. So it's taking the spatial information of our culverts, and it's combining the extra additional information through submitted inspection forms and inspection records, and taking that data and throwing it in from the inspection records table as well. And from here, we can go ahead and we can choose a different way to symbolize this data. So instead of just showing a location, what we can do, for instance, if we want to take from our survey form, what kind of recommended action, if there was a maintenance action required selected in the Survey123 form, we can show what recommended action needs to be taken. Here we can choose unique symbols, and we can show, hey, with some of these culverts, some have been recommended as being repaired, some have been recommended as getting replaced, some need to be cleaned out and maintenance. So we can go ahead and click OK and done. So from here we can see again which of these culverts needs that follow-up action associated with it. So these ones here with a red dot need to be repaired. The ones with the blue dot over here need to be replaced. And of course, all of that can be configured as required. So now that we've got that, I wanted to show in a little bit further detail here the pop-up settings for our culverts. To do this, we'll go ahead and we'll click on these three buttons here on our culverts feature layer. We're going to go ahead and here configure our pop-up. You can see we've got that pop-up title, and we've also got our display type. Again, instead of a list, we're going to show a custom attribute display. Here, we're going to be able to click on this configure icon. And you can see this is where I've come in and I've shown just some different fields that a user will see in the pop-up. Here's our hyperlink text that I showed in our PowerPoint. So to hyperlink a text, again, you would just kind of highlight that text. And here we can see that link. This is the text that's shown. And here's our URL that we copied into this URL box, along with the fields that we've selected for pre-populating. So once those fields in that URL is updated, we go ahead and we click on update, and then we click on OK. Make sure to click OK here as well. Since it's already configured for me, I'm just going to go ahead and click cancel. Now we would go ahead and we'd save our web map, and then that would go ahead and show, okay, Collector is ready to look at this map since now it's got an editable layer, it's got a pop-up enabled. Now what I'd like to do is show this process on an iPad to kind of replicate that mobile field inspection workflow here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is see if I can share my screen on the iPad. I'm going to go ahead and get this set up real quick. All right, now that I've got my iPad all hooked up here, ready to go. So here what we can do is we're going to go ahead and look at these culverts as they appear in our GIS collector. So you can see my current location down here in kind of the southwest corner, that little blue dot. So we can see when I select a culvert, I'm going to select the one that, again, we saw earlier from our layers here, which ones haven't been inspected and which ones have been inspected. So we can, again, toggle these view layers on and off, these join layers on and off to kind of give us some additional context as we're out in the field performing our inspections. So I want to submit an inspection record on our culvert here that hasn't had an inspection record submitted. So again, we're going to see that pop-up that I created in the top left. We're going to see that ID, that culvert 3. So here we're going to submit an inspection record on culvert number 3. We can see just some basic attributes about this culvert here. That it's a concrete box. The material is concrete. It's 36 feet in length, and it had a very good condition the last time it was inspected from the culvert's data, not from the inspection records table. So to add an inspection record here, what we would do is click on that hyperlink text, and it's going to open up the survey directly in the Survey123 field app, as I mentioned earlier. So a couple things to point out here within the Survey123 app. At the very top, we see our culvert inspections form title. Right underneath that, we see the asset ID of the specific culvert. So these are two of the pre-populated fields that I pre-populated based on our URL structure. So you can see I pre-populated the asset ID of this culvert with culvert 3, and I also took the asset GUID, and that asset GUID is the global ID of the culvert of culvert 3. So this is the specific global ID that once this survey form is submitted will live as a record in the related table, in that inspections table, that will be specific to this culvert 3. And we've also had some survey settings that we did in the first and second webinar where I can't edit any of this information on accident. So I'm going to go ahead and actually get out of that real quick. But if I go ahead and I try to change that asset GUID, it's not going to let me. So that would just kind of save some user error if out in the field an end user accidentally would select that asset GUID and change anything in there. We're not going to be able to let them do that here in this case. So we know that when this survey is submitted, it's going to be related properly to culvert 3. We can see also in our survey form that we've populated today's inspection date, and we've also populated using some functionality in Survey123 Connect, the inspected by user. So you can see I'm the one inspecting this culvert, and it's populated with today's date. Now, of course, we could change any of that if we wanted to, but in this case, we are good to go. Here we've got our different rating fields. So if I enter a structural rating here, we can see through our hint value in the hint field in the Survey123 form that we said enter a rating value between 1 and 10. We've also got constraints built into the survey form that will not allow a user to enter a value and submit the form outside of that 1 through 10 option. So if I say the structural rating on this culvert is a 9, and I go ahead and I click through the next one, the opening rating, we can see that structural condition field right underneath the structural rating has calculated to very good. And again, that's kind of showing off some built-in calculation that we created in our survey form to show off how easy it would be for an end user to enter some values and have data populate automatically based on their values. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing for opening rating. This time, this opening rating I'll say is, we'll say it's a 6. It's not quite as good as the structure rating. We can see now that opening condition is just fair. And we can see maybe from the scour rating, if we give it a 2, you know, this culvert has got a lot of scour on it. It's going to need to be cleaned. I'll go ahead and enter that here as well. And when I do that, that scour condition populates as critical. Our overall culvert rating is another calculation field that we built in our survey form that is averaging the total rating of our structural rating, our opening rating, and our scour rating that's creating an average culvert rating based on those 3 input values. So again, our end user only has to enter in 3 options here. They only have to give it a structural rating. Again, the value is from 1 to 10. They have to give it an opening rating and a scour rating. But other than that, it's populating all of these and calculating these different condition fields and even the overall condition, the rating here as well. So that just saves the end user a lot of time and a lot of effort instead of filling out all of these individual fields in their form. They only have to fill in a couple. And if we've got that calculation functionality built in, it's going to be saving them a lot of time. Next, if we say some maintenance action, is there going to be maintenance action required? In this case, we're going to say yes. And now, since we selected yes, we've also are displaying a relevancy here, some relevancy functionality that we built into our survey form. So if I select no, no further options or no further thing is going to pop up for our user. But if they select yes, it's going to ask them what recommended action do you need to do with this culvert? Since we had a bad scour rating, we're going to say we just need to give this one a good cleaning. We're going to clean the ends. We can have any comments here. I'm going to say this is an example. And we can also attach any images or files that we'd like as well through the submission form. So once our form is ready to go, we've inspected our culvert, we filled out all the necessary fields. We can go ahead and click that little check mark down here. Now it's going to ask, okay, or do you want to go ahead and send your survey or continue it or save it for later? We're going to go ahead and we're just going to click on save now, or send now, excuse me. So now what it's going to do is it's going to populate and send that survey form. It's going to submit to that culverts feature layer as a related record. So now if I go ahead and if I share my screen back on my device here, now I'm going to be able to see if I go to, I'm going to refresh my web map here. If I go to now select this culvert, we can see the show related records option down here at the bottom. We're going to see now that our inspection, our survey form was submitted. We can see now that we have instantly a submitted inspection record on this specific culvert. We can see the date that it was sent. We can see it was myself that inspected that culvert. The culvert, the asset ID, again, we're looking at culvert 3. We can see all those condition fields that we entered, again, some comments that I entered, and all of that good stuff here as well. So now, to show off some of these join layers, if I go ahead and I select this culvert inspected, you can see now that our join layers update automatically as well. Now that data is populated through the related records. So that is a great example of how to kind of tie in your survey forms with Collector. And again, you can do so much with this data now that you've got it all tied together. We can also see in our web map all of the submitted inspection records in the related table. You can see my colleague Matt has submitted a number of inspections on the other culverts. And so again, that is kind of the process of tying together Survey123 with ArcGIS Collector. Bill,
Wow.
do we have any questions out there?
Yeah, spot on, Mike. That was great. Yes, we do have a couple here.
Okay, great.
So, are the global IDs different in how they are managed by the software? I've made it a practice to never use a software managed field for a join because the software can change that number.
Correct. So that's a great question. This, I would say, is different. So yes, they will always be different and always be unique, but they are not like object IDs that can change. So for instance, if I've taken my culverts feature layer, right? And I've got an object ID in my culverts. If I export my culverts or if I bounce them around from geodatabase to geodatabase, object ID numbers can change, whereas global IDs will always remain unique and remain the same. No global ID will be replicated in any sort of the process in ArcGIS Online. And so that requirement, again, is not so much as a recommendation from me as it is a requirement by Esri, that once the survey form is and the relationship class is built upon that global ID, then we can go ahead and utilize this workflow. Again, this is kind of a requirement from Esri that the global IDs are utilized in this process to relate the feature class to the related table. But no, they will not change like object IDs will. But that is a great question. And you can kind of rest assured, rest easy using global IDs to build your relationships upon.
Great. Let's go ahead. Let's do one more, guys. If we can't get to your question, we will definitely follow up with you guys offline, but let's do one more here. Does this process work the same in ArcGIS Enterprise Portal as it does in ArcGIS Online?
That's a great question. I have not yet implemented it in Portal or Enterprise, but I would have a feeling that yes, it would operate very similarly. Again, I can't verify that, just speaking from personal experience that I haven't implemented it in that space, but I have a feeling yes, it would operate and require the same setup that it would for ArcGIS Online.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, guys, we're going to wrap that up. I just put up our contact information. I'll drop that in the chat box as well. So, again, thank you so much, all of you, for attending today. And for those of you that stuck through all three parts, thanks for the questions and the responses on the polls and all that. We had great interaction. We just love it. So, by all means, any questions or anything, get a hold of Mike directly or myself as well. Get a hold of us, cloudpointgeo.com/contact. Of course, our office number is up there, 877-377-8124. We will be working remotely from home for the foreseeable future, most of us, but the number will forward to us, and you can always get a hold of us on email as well. And look us up on social media, like and follow us there as well for any updates that we post out there as well. So again, thank you guys so much for attending today. I'll get this recording trimmed up and get it sent out to you guys. And again, we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks a lot.